There are wars people fight in silence every day. No one hears the noise. No one sees the damage. But those unseen battles shape entire lives. The greatest conflict is not always around you. Sometimes it is happening inside you. Inside your thoughts. Inside your fears. Inside the conversations you keep replaying when the world goes quiet. Some people are exhausted not because life is impossible, but because their minds never rest. The body sits still, but the thoughts keep running. Fear predicts disasters that never happen. Regret drags old memories back to life. Shame repeats words God already forgave. And slowly, without realizing it, a person can become imprisoned by their own thinking. Jesus understood this deeply. That is why he constantly spoke about the heart, the mind, the inner life. Because before a life falls apart publicly, it usually collapses privately first. A thought becomes a pattern becomes a mindset, and eventually, a mindset becomes direction. Most people try to fix their lives externally, while ignoring what is happening internally. They pray for peace, while feeding anxiety every hour. They ask God for clarity, while allowing confusion to dominate their attention. But Jesus never treated thoughts as something harmless. He knew the mind is like soil. Whatever grows there long enough eventually produces fruit. That is why not every thought deserves agreement. Some thoughts are wounds talking. Some are fears speaking louder than truth. Some are lies disguised as logic. And if you never question them, they slowly begin shaping your identity. Look at Jesus in the wilderness. Hungry, alone, weak physically. And where did temptation begin? Not with violence, with a suggestion. If you are really the Son of God. The enemy attacked identity before behavior, because confusion about identity creates vulnerability everywhere else. And notice something powerful. Jesus did not entertain the thought. He answered with truth, not emotion, not panic, not insecurity. Truth. That moment reveals something important. Thoughts grow stronger when constantly entertained, but weaker when confronted. Some thoughts are not meant to be negotiated with. They are meant to be rejected. This is why mental discipline matters spiritually, because many believers rebuke darkness publicly, while secretly agreeing with it internally. Fear becomes normal. Bitterness becomes familiar. Self-hatred becomes routine. And after enough repetition, bondage starts feeling natural. But God never intended your mind to become a prison. He intended it to become a place of peace. The Apostle Paul later said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Not occasionally, continually. Because whatever the mind rehearses repeatedly, the heart eventually believes. Modern psychology now confirms something Scripture revealed long ago. Repeated thoughts create mental pathways. What you think about consistently begins shaping your emotional reality. This is why worry is dangerous. Worry is meditation on fear. It is giving imagination to darkness. It is building emotional attachment to things that have not even happened. Jesus asked, "Why do you worry?" Not to shame people for struggling, but to redirect their focus. Fear will knock at the door, but you decide whether it stays. And maybe that is where many people are right now. Tired mentally, drained emotionally, overloaded internally. Not because God abandoned them, but because their minds have been carrying burdens they were never designed to hold. Old conversations, future scenarios, past mistakes, imaginary disasters. The mind becomes crowded, and eventually the soul becomes exhausted. But God is calling His people back to stillness, back to discernment, back to inner alignment. Not every voice in your head speaks truth. Some voices were created by trauma, some by disappointment, some by years of insecurity. That is why spiritual maturity is not learning how to avoid every negative thought. It is learning how to recognize which thoughts deserve authority. Jesus constantly withdrew into silence. Why? Because silence exposes what noise hides. And in silence, truth becomes clearer. Many people are afraid of quiet, because quiet reveals what they have been avoiding internally. But healing often begins there. Not in performance, not in pretending, in honesty. God is not shocked by your mental battles. He is not intimidated by your doubts. He is inviting you to bring those thoughts into the light instead of fighting them alone in darkness. Because freedom does not come from never facing struggle. Freedom comes from learning who rules your mind during struggle. And slowly, when truth becomes louder than fear, something changes. Peace becomes stronger. Faith becomes steadier. Obedience becomes lighter. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because your thoughts stopped controlling you. You begin realizing you are not every thought that passes through your head. You are the person who chooses which thoughts to believe, and that changes everything. So today, guard your mind carefully. Be mindful of what you repeat internally, because your inner world eventually becomes your outer direction. Feed your faith intentionally. Return to truth daily. And stop building permanent homes for temporary fears. God did not create you to live mentally chained. He created you to walk in clarity, discernment, peace, and trust. Even now, in the middle of uncertainty, He is teaching your mind how to rest again. And maybe the real battle was never just about circumstances. Maybe it was always about who would shape your thinking, fear, or truth.